I was at my grandson's baseball game last Saturday. Ninth inning, tie game, everyone on their feet. The bleachers are those metal ones, you know, with the gaps between the steps. Game ends, our team wins, everyone's cheering. People start heading down. And I notice something. Almost everyone around my age, they're gripping the railing, taking the steps sideways. One woman in front of me actually sat down and scooted down on her bottom because her knees couldn't handle the descent. I walked down those bleachers normal speed, no railing, no pain. Didn't think much of it until my daughter said something later. She said, "Dad, did you see how everyone else was struggling with those stairs? You were the only one over 70 who just walked." I'm Thomas Keller. I'm 82 years old. I live by myself in a ranch house outside Spokane. And my knees, they work. They don't hurt. They don't swell up. They don't keep me from doing things I want to do. That wasn't always true. 6 years ago, I could barely make it through a grocery trip without sitting down. The pain was constant, like someone had filled my knee joints with ground glass. Every step reminded me I was getting old. My doctor talked about knee replacement, said it was probably inevitable. Just a matter of when. I didn't want surgery. I'd seen what happened to my brother after his knee replacement. The recovery, the complications, the physical therapy that never quite got him back to normal. So I started researching, talking to people, trying things. And over time, I found 5 things that actually worked. Not supplements, not special shoes. Just 5 simple things I do every single day that save my knees. If you're willing to subscribe, I'd appreciate it. What I'm sharing isn't theory. It's what brought me back from barely walking to moving without pain. Let me tell you about the first thing. Every morning, before I even get out of bed, I spend 5 minutes doing something that probably sounds strange. I pedal my legs in the air like I'm riding an invisible bicycle. Just lying on my back, lift my legs, and pedal. Forward for a minute, backward for a minute, forward again, backward again. 5 minutes total. When I first mention this to people, they look at me like I'm making it up. What's that supposed to do? Everything, actually. Your knees. They don't have their own blood supply like other parts of your body. The cartilage in your knees gets nutrients from synovial fluid. That fluid only moves when your joint moves. When you sleep, you're not moving for 8 hours. That fluid just sits there. Your knees wake up stiff because they're essentially dehydrated. Most people deal with this by hobbling around for the first hour until things loosen up. Or they take pills. I figured out something better. If I move my knees before I put any weight on them, the fluid starts circulating. The cartilage gets fed. By the time I stand up, my knees are ready. I learned this from a physical therapist I met at my nephew's wedding. She was probably mid-50s, worked with athletes. We got talking about knee problems, and she mentioned this technique. She said elite athletes do morning joint circulation work before they even step out of bed. Gets the synovial fluid moving, prepares the joints for load bearing. I tried it the next morning. 5 minutes of air pedaling felt ridiculous. But when I stood up, something was different. The usual stiffness wasn't there. I've done it every single morning for 6 years now. Haven't missed a day. And my knees haven't woken up stiff since. You can try this tomorrow. Don't get out of bed immediately when you wake up. Lie on your back, lift your legs, pedal in the air. Give it 5 minutes. See how your knees feel when you stand up. If you've got knee pain, this one thing might change your mornings. The second habit happens in the kitchen, but it's not about what I eat. It's about where I eat it. I don't sit down for breakfast. I stand at the counter. Every morning, I make my coffee, my oatmeal, whatever I'm having. And I eat it standing up. Takes maybe 15 minutes. People think this is strange. My daughter keeps offering to bring me a proper kitchen table. I tell her I don't want one. Here's why. When you sit, especially right after waking up, your hip flexors tighten. Your hamstrings shorten. Everything pulls on your knee joints. Sit for 3 meals a day, plus time in front of the TV, plus time reading, and you're spending most of your day with your knees in a bent position. Over years, this creates something called flexion contracture. Your knees start to prefer the bent position. Standing up straight becomes uncomfortable. Walking becomes harder. I watched this happen to my neighbor, Arthur. He's 78. Sits for breakfast, sits at his desk doing crosswords, sits for lunch, sits watching TV, sits for dinner. Last time I saw him walk, his knees were slightly bent even when he was standing. He shuffles now instead of taking full steps. His body has adapted to sitting. Standing for meals does the opposite. It keeps my knees in extension, keeps my hip flexors loose, keeps my whole lower body in a functional position. Plus, I found another benefit I didn't expect. I eat less when I stand. There's something about standing that makes you more aware of when you're actually full. Sitting down, I'd mindlessly keep eating. I'm not saying you need to stand all day, just for breakfast. 15 minutes. That's enough to tell your body that standing is normal, that your knees should work in extension, not just flexion. Try it for a week. Make your breakfast, stand at the counter, eat it standing up. Notice how your knees feel when you start moving around afterward. Now, the third thing is something I do in the afternoon. Every single day, no exceptions. I walk backwards for 10 minutes. I know how that sounds. Just hear me out. There's a high school track about 3 blocks from my house. Around 2 o'clock every afternoon, I walk over there. And I walk backwards around that track for 10 minutes. The first few times, I felt like an idiot. People would stare. Some kids laughed. I didn't care because I knew what it was doing for my knees. When you walk forward, you use the same muscles the same way every single step. Your quadriceps do most of the work. Your hamstrings do very little. Over decades, this creates an imbalance. Strong quads, weak hamstrings. And weak hamstrings mean unstable knees. Walking backwards reverses this. Suddenly, your hamstrings have to work hard. Your calves engage differently. Your balance system activates in new ways. And your knees move through their full range of motion in the opposite direction than they're used to. This does something important. It strengthens the muscles you've been neglecting. It rebalances the forces around your knee joint. I learned about backward walking from an orthopedic surgeon I met at a community health fair. He was giving a talk about knee preservation. He said backward walking is one of the most underutilized rehab techniques. Reduces impact force on the knee by about 40% compared to forward walking. Builds strength in stabilizing muscles that forward walking doesn't touch. He said if everyone over 60 walked backwards for just 10 minutes a day, knee replacement surgeries would drop significantly. I started that week. It was harder than I expected. My balance wasn't great. I had to go slow. But I stayed with it. Within a month, I noticed my knees felt more stable. The wobbliness I'd been experiencing on uneven ground disappeared. Going downstairs became easier. Now, 6 years later, backward walking is as automatic as forward walking. I don't even think about it. If you want to try this, start safe. Find a track or an empty parking lot. Somewhere flat with no obstacles. Just walk backwards slowly. Even 5 minutes helps. Your knees will thank you. The fourth habit is probably the most important one, but it's also the hardest to explain because it's not really about doing something. It's about not doing something. I don't ice my knees. Ever. When people hear I have no knee pain, they ask what I do when my knees hurt. I tell them my knees don't hurt. They ask, but what about when they do? What do you ice them with? I don't ice them. And that's part of why they don't hurt. For years, the standard advice was ice any joint pain. Reduce inflammation. Reduce swelling. Turns out, that might be exactly backwards. I read an article about 3 years ago, interview with a sports medicine researcher. He said inflammation isn't the enemy, it's the healing process. When your knee gets irritated, inflammation brings blood flow, nutrients, healing factors to the area. It's your body trying to repair damage. When you ice it, you shut down that healing response. You feel better temporarily because you've numbed the area. But you've also stopped the repair process. Do this repeatedly over years, and you prevent your knees from ever actually healing. They stay in this chronic state of low-level damage that never resolves. I had a friend, Dennis. He's 74. Every time his knees bothered him, he'd ice them for 20 minutes. Multiple times a day sometimes. His knees never got better. They'd feel okay after icing, then hurt again a few hours later. The cycle never ended. I stopped icing my knees 6 years ago. When they feel irritated, which is rare now, I do the opposite. I apply gentle heat. I move them gently. I let the inflammation do its job. And you know what? The irritation resolves faster. My knees actually heal instead of just getting temporarily numbed. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you to ignore pain or avoid medical care. But I am saying that ice might not be the solution everyone thinks it is. If you've been icing your knees for years and they're not getting better, maybe try something different. Try heat. Try gentle movement. See what happens. Now we get to the 5th habit. And this one changed everything for me. But it's also the one people resist the most. Every evening, right before bed, I spend 15 minutes sitting on the floor. Not in a chair. On the floor. I sit cross-legged, or with my legs straight out, or kneeling, or in whatever position feels right that day. I just sit there. Sometimes I read. Sometimes I just think. But I'm on the floor for 15 minutes minimum. This drives my daughter crazy when she visits. Dad, get up from there. You're going to hurt yourself. What if you can't get up? I can get up. That's the entire point. Most people over 70 can't get down to the floor anymore, and if they can get down, they can't get back up. So they avoid the floor entirely. And the less they do it, the harder it becomes. Until eventually, it's impossible. Getting down to the floor and back up requires hip flexibility, knee strength, balance, core stability. It's one of the best full-body functional movements there is. When you can do it easily, it means everything is still working together. When you can't, it means you've lost critical capacity. I started sitting on the floor specifically to preserve this ability, because I knew if I lost it, I'd lost something fundamental. The first few weeks were hard. Getting down was okay. Getting up required some effort. My knees would complain a little. But I stayed consistent. Every single evening. 15 minutes on the floor. Within a few months, it became easy. Now it's automatic. I can get down to the floor and back up smoothly. No hands, no struggle. And here's what I noticed. The act of getting down and up, it strengthens my knees in ways that regular walking doesn't. It moves them through ranges of motion that daily life doesn't require anymore. That preservation of full range of motion is probably why my knees don't hurt. They're not locked in limited patterns. They still move freely through their complete range. There's research on this, studies from Brazil. People who can sit on the floor and stand back up without support have significantly lower mortality rates. It's a predictor of overall functional health. I believe it, because this one habit has kept my knees mobile, strong, and pain-free in ways nothing else did. If you haven't sat on the floor in years, start small. Get down using a chair for support if you need to. Just practice the movement. Your knees need that full range of motion to stay healthy. So those are the 5 things. Air pedaling in bed for 5 minutes every morning. Standing to eat breakfast for 15 minutes. Walking backwards for 10 minutes every afternoon. Not icing my knees when they're irritated. Sitting on the floor for 15 minutes every evening. None of them are complicated. None cost money. Together they take maybe an hour out of my day. In exchange, I got my knees back. I got my mobility back. I got my independence back. I can walk without pain. I can go up and down stairs normally. I can get on the floor to play with my grandkids. I can stand through a baseball game and walk down bleachers afterward. Most people my age can't do these things anymore, not because they're 82, but because they stopped doing the small things that keep knees healthy. They stopped moving their joints before loading them. They sat for every meal. They only walked forward. They iced every minor irritation, They avoided the floor entirely. And slowly, year by year, their knees deteriorated. Mine didn't. Not because I'm lucky. Because I was consistent. 6 years ago, I was heading for knee replacement surgery. Today, my doctor says my knees are in remarkable condition for my age. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because I did these 5 things every single day. If your knees hurt, if you're struggling with stairs, if you're considering surgery, try these habits first. Give them 6 months of consistent effort. You might be surprised at what your knees can recover when you actually give them what they need. Movement before load. Extension over constant flexion. Backward walking for balance. Heat and movement over ice and rest. Full range of motion through floor sitting. These 5 principles have kept me walking without pain at 82. They can do the same for you. Start tomorrow. Your knees are waiting for you to give them a chance.